welcome to the conference program of World Bulk Wine Exhibition 2022, the start. We have the master of the figures with us, as I would say, Giorgio Del Grosso. Giorgio is the head of the Statistics and Digital Transformation Department of International Organization of Wine and Wine, which he joined in 2017. Among his responsibilities, he coordinates the OIV statistic group of experts, where representatives from the 48 member states of the organization gathered to improve the consistency, comparability, and quality of statistical data on the wine and wine sector. Giorgio holds a double Master of Science in Economics from the University of Torino in Italy and an International Trade, Finance and Development from the Barcelona Graduate School of Economics. So Giorgio, the stage is yours. He will speak about 20 minutes, he said. Afterwards, we will have the chance for questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Hello, and good morning, and welcome everybody. So, as you might know, it is many years that the OIV gives the patronage to this important event, to the World Bulk Wine Exhibition. And like every year, we open this important event with an overview of the latest data and statistics on the wine sector at world level. So, to continue this tradition, I prepared some of the latest figures on the recent evolution on vineyard surface areas, grapes production, wine consumption, and of course, international trade of wine. So please note that all the data that I will show refer to 2021, with the exception of production, where I will show the first estimates 2022 that were released just a couple of weeks ago. So without further ado, let's get started. So before going through the data, let me just spend a few words on what the OIV is, for those of you who don't know it or are not familiar with. So the OIV stands for International Organization of Wine and Wine. It is an intergovernmental organization like the UN, OECD, World Bank, and so on and so forth. It was created in 1924 and now counts 49 member states, with Ukraine that just joined a couple of weeks ago. So the main objective is the harmonization of standards and practices related to production, consumption, and trade of wine and other products issued by the vine. And to accomplish this task, we can count on a network of more than 1,000 experts that compose the scientific delegations of our member states. Now, while the essential function of the OIV has to do mainly with soft law and regulations, at the OIV we carry out also a number of side activities. For example, I am in charge of one of these, that is the collection and analysis of data, of sectorial data at world level. And what I will show you in a sec is a selection of the main kind of data that we collect. Now, let me start with the data on vineyard surfaces and grape production. So this is what we call the global grape balance sheet of 2021, which gives you a general overview of what happened to the vine and wine sector in 2021 at world level. So with an average yield of about 10 tons per hectare, the world vineyard, whose surface area is estimated at 7.3 million hectares, has produced last year 74.8 million tons of fresh grapes in total. So the breakdown of this total is the following. We have 37.2 million tons, that is 52%, were destined for wine, must, and juices. 30.1 million tons, that is 41%, were destined to the direct human consumption, so table grapes. And the remaining 7% were grapes to be dried. Now, as I said before, the total area under vines in the world, including all types of grapes, accounts in 2021 for 7.3 million hectares. And as you can see, the evolution of the world vineyards seems to have stabilized at these figures since 2017. So two factors are mainly attributing to this stability. On one hand, the growth of the Chinese vineyards that has spurred in the early 2000s is slowing down. And secondly, as you might know, the growth of the European Union vineyards that currently accounts for 46% of the world total, has been capped by an authorization system for new plantings. So for the rest of the countries in 2021, we see heterogeneous tendencies, but that overall balance out among themselves, leading to this stability. Now, the top 6 vineyards in the world account for more than half of the areas under vines at world level. Spain, France, and Italy together account for 1/3 of the world vineyard, and the 3 other largest vineyards are outside Europe, notably in China, Turkey, and in the USA. So moving to country-level data, Spain yet again covers the largest vineyard surface area in the world in 2021 with 964,000 hectares. France second with 798,000 hectares, while China in the 3rd place is estimated at 783,000 hectares. So as we can see in this slide, in the last 5 to 10 years, France, China, and Italy are among the largest vineyards driving world surfaces upward. Turkey, on the other hand, has been massively decreasing its vineyard surfaces, and similarly in the US, we see a declining trend since 2014. Now, in this thematic map, we can observe the geographical distribution of grape production with a breakdown by type of grape. And here we have all the countries that in 2021 produced more than 1 million tons of grape. So, as you can see, Asia is by far the continent that produces more table grapes. In fact, more than half of the production of table grapes in the world is concentrated there. Europe, with a few exceptions, is mostly specialized in the production of wine grapes. And then we have countries such as USA, Chile, South Africa, and Brazil, whose grape productions tend to be more balanced across different types of grapes. We move now to the wine sector, and in particular, we start with the first estimates of wine production 2022. So, based on the information collected from our member states last month, the world wine production in 2022 is estimated between 258 and 262 million hectoliters, with a point estimate at 260 million hectoliters. So despite the severe drought and heat waves observed during the growing seasons in many regions around the world, this volume can be considered only slightly below the average observed in the last 20 years, and seems to have fallen only by 1% compared to 2021. So this is due to a higher than expected harvest in Europe. Just to give you an idea, according to the Global Drought Observatory, this summer Europe experienced the worst drought in the last 500 years. But thanks to the rainfall at the end of the summer, the harvest in the end went pretty well in many regions. So this, coupled with an overall average production in the Southern Hemisphere and in the USA, led to these 260 million hectoliters. So as you can see from this graph, the world wine production seems to stabilize around these figures for the 4th consecutive year. Now, here we can see the geographical distribution of wine production in 2022. As you can see from the pie chart, 3 countries, Italy, France, and Spain, it's not a surprise, account for almost half of the wine production in the world, and 3/4 of the world production is accounted for by the top 8 producing countries. The European Union at 154 million hectoliters in 2022, which is plus 2% compared to 2021, represents more than 60% of the world total, while the Southern Hemisphere accounts for a bit more than 20% of the world production, with 55 million hectoliters in total, which is 7% less than the historical large production of 2021. Now, here we have figures at country level. I don't know if you can see it. So you can see the production volumes in red in the upper graph, and the percentage change with respect to 2021 in the lower blue histograms. Here we have the top 20 wine-producing countries, which represent about 95% of the world total. So Italy, once again, ranks first producers of the world with 50.3 million hectoliters, a volume that is more or less in line with 2021. France after the extremely low vintage of 2021, foresees a production level of 44.2 million hectoliters, which represents a plus 17% compared to last year. Spain, this year will be the third largest wine producer in the world, with an estimated production of 33 million hectoliters, which is a relatively low volume, attributed mainly to drought and limited access to water in many regions. So we observed similar issues in the USA, fourth producers at the world level, where the preliminary estimate for 2022 is 23.1 million hectoliters, 4% lower compared to last year. The largest wine-producing country in the southern hemisphere this year will be Chile, with wine production peaking at 12.4 million hectoliters. And then, as you can see in the slide, Australia, with 12.1 million hectoliters, registered quite significant decrease with respect to the record high vintage 2021, with minus 18%. The countries that complete the top 10 are Argentina with 11.4 million hectoliters, followed by South Africa at 10.2, Germany at 8.9, and finally the 10th place we find Portugal with an estimated wine production of 6.7 million hectoliters. Now, let's have a look at what happened to wine consumption in 2021. In the last 3 years, we observed a significant decline of wine consumption at the world level due to two main factors. On the one hand, China's declining demand starting in 2018, and on the other hand, of course, the COVID-19 crisis that heavily impacted the majority of wine markets. Now, in 2021, the estimated world wine consumption has reached 235 million hectoliters, recording a plus 1% compared to the catastrophic 2020. This is the consequence of the uplifting of lockdown measures that have, as anticipated, contributed to an increase in consumption in most countries around the world, and we expect this moderate but positive trend to continue in 2022. Here we can see the geographical distribution of wine consumption. So top 10 wine-consuming countries represent about 70% of the total consumption worldwide. The European Union alone represents almost half of the world total in 2021, 48% to be precise. Interesting to note, in terms of relative weight over the world wine consumption, the European Union's share has significantly decreased in the last 20 years, when it was, in 2000, it was estimated at almost 60%. And this is a clear indication of how wine is becoming a more globalized product. Now, moving at country level, here again you can see consumption volumes in the upper graph and the percentage changes with respect to 2020 in the lower blue histograms. Here we have all countries that consumed more than 2 million hectoliters in 2021, which together represent 86% of the world market. So USA, with 33.1 million hectoliters, is the largest wine market in the world. Over the last 3 years, the USA has proven to be a resilient market, notwithstanding trade-related tensions with some European Union countries and the restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. France is the second largest consuming country in the world, with 25.2 million hectoliters in 2021. So relying heavily on the HoReCa channel, France, as expected, increased its wine consumption with the reopening of restaurants and celebrations, not only compared to 2020, but also with respect to its pre-pandemic 2019 level. Italy, third at world level, with 24.2 million hectoliters consumed in 2021, recorded the highest wine consumption since the aftermath of the global financial crisis of 2008. Spain has increased its wine consumption by almost 10% in 2021, reaching a volume in line with its pre-pandemic levels. China's 2021 wine consumption is estimated to decline by 15% with respect to 2020. So post-2017, there has been a decline of more than 9 million hectoliters in China, causing a significant impact in driving down consumption at world level, as I was saying before. So there are two cases that are quite interesting to note. One is the boom in the Brazil's wine consumption in the last 2 years that could be due to a change in consumption patterns during the pandemic that probably permanently shift Brazil's demand for wine to a higher level. And it is also worth noting the case of South Africa, that with the lifting of COVID lockdown restrictions that had banned sales for 14 weeks in 2020, saw a significant increase of 28% in 2021. Now, here we have the top wine consuming countries, so those above 2 million hectoliters, with their totals on the left-hand side of the slide, and the per capita consumptions on the right. So please note that following a recommendation of the WHO, at the OIV we compute per capita consumptions over a population of more than 16 years old only. So in this particular ranking, Portugal has the highest consumption per capita with about 52 liters per person. France and Italy follow with 47 and 46 liters per capita respectively. Now, it is interesting to compare each country's position in these rankings, as this can give an idea about the potential for growth of the different markets. For instance, if 25 liters is, by and large, the average of per capita consumption of the largest wine-consuming countries, those countries at the bottom of the graph, like USA, Canada, South Africa, not to mention China, Russia, they have, in theory, a higher potential of growth with respect to more mature markets. This is, of course, a bit simplistic because there are many other factors at play, like, for example, competition with other alcoholic beverages, but still, it is an indicator to keep in mind. Now, let's move to what is probably the most interesting and relevant topic of my presentation, given the nature of this event, and I'm talking about international trade. So 2021 was a very lucrative year in terms of international trade of wine. World wine exports increased by 4% in volume, reaching almost 112 million hectoliters, and 16% in value, reaching 34.4 billion euros in 2021. And these are the highest figures ever recorded. So 2021 figures are higher even compared to the 2019 pre-pandemic levels by 4% in volume and 8% in value. Now, as you can see from the line graphs, all categories except bag-in-box saw an increase in volumes exported in 2021. In value terms, bottled and sparkling wine increased by 13% and plus 35% respectively, while bag-in-box declined by 1% and bulk wine by 5%. Overall, an increase in average prices in all categories but bulk wine has been observed in 2021. So moving to the main exporters, all types of wines included, so bottled, sparkling, bulk, bag-in-box, we see that the top three exporters are by far Spain, Italy, and France, which together exported almost 60 million hectoliters in 2021, accounting for 54% of the world exports in volume and 61% in value. As you can see, all top exporters show an increase in their exports with respect to 2020. Spain, with 23 million hectoliters, increased by 14% in volume and 10% in value. Italy increased by 7% in volume and 13% in value. And France grew its export by 8% in volume and stunning 27% in value. However, there are few exceptions to these positive trends. Australia, for instance, bore a significant brunt of the Chinese tariffs in both export volume, which fell by 17% compared to 2020, and value that declined by 24% with respect to the previous year. Now, in these slides, we see the main bulk wine exporters in 2021 in volume in the upper graph and in value in the lower graph. So the top three countries are Spain, first by far with almost 13 million hectoliters, Italy, 3.7 million hectoliters, and Chile at 3.5 million hectoliters. While in value, we have still Spain at the first place with 479 million euros, followed by Australia, 307 million euros, and New Zealand with 284 million euros. We move now to the main wine importers. Here again, we start with imports with all types of wines included. So Germany, US, and UK are the largest import markets with 42 million hectoliters, together account for 38% of the total world imports. And this amount was worth last year 13.1 billion euros. In 2021, Germany remains the first importer in value with 14.5 million hectoliters, which is worth 2.8 billion euros. And it is an increase in value by 6% with respect to the previous year. USA is the first importer by value, and in 2021 imported wine for a total amount of 6.2 billion euros, which is a plus 21% compared to 2020. And this is a record high value by far. So UK's imports have decreased by 7% in volume, but increased by 7% in value, indicated that average prices of imported wines have clearly increased last year. As you can see from the slide, all countries have positive variations in their value of imports, except China, whose imports have declined in 2021 by only 1% in value, but by 11%, by 1% in volume, but by 11% in value. And this is due to a change of the composition of Chinese imports that in 2021 have seen a reduced share of bottled wine with a slightly increased share of bulk and sparkling wine. Here you can see the main bulk wine importing countries in 2021. Again, volumes figures in the upper part, value figures in the lower side of the slide. So the top three importers by value in 2021 are Germany with 8.1 million hectoliters, followed by UK at 4.7 and the USA at 4.4 million hectoliters. While in value, we have UK at the first place with 567 million euros, then Germany at 460 million euros, and USA at 337 million euros. Now, I will conclude my presentation with an indicator of the degree of the internationalization of wine. We called it the Market Internationalization Index, and it is nothing but the ratio between world wine exports and world wine consumption. So in 2021, this index is at 47%, meaning that of all the wine consumed in the world, almost half is imported wine. As you can see, this index has steadily increased in the last 20 years, and we think this is a clear proof that wine is a product that, as I said before, is getting more and more globalized, and I guess this is very good news for all producers and traders present today. My presentation ends here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Giorgio. We would have a little time for one or two questions. If there's any questions, just let us know. No, you explained everything so well. There is one question. Wait a minute.
I saw in your in the table a big decrease of the Australian wines you highlighted. And what's the main reason of this big decrease of Australian?
You mean in the exports of Australia? Yeah, but Australia was relying highly on China as an export market, and given the huge tariffs that the Chinese government decided to put on Australian wine, that explains the fall in Australian exports.
This can be reason to decrease of the wine from Australia to buy, because they have now. This can be reason to decrease of the price of the wine from Australia now. For example, if we want to buy now,
it could be now.
Because 24% is quite big decreasing, and it can be make a big impact for the production, because it's over 24%.
Yeah.
It's not 2 or 3%. It's
no, there will be certainly a price effect. Now, I don't have the figures on prices in mind, so I mean, I can't give you a full answer, but certainly there will be some impacts also at price levels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Give us 2 or 3 minutes till we start the next presentation. The next presentation, the topic will be the canned wine revolution. First of all, we will have a presentation of Robert Williams, which will last about 15 minutes, and then a talking round, a panel afterwards, with Alicia Towns-Franken, with Mark Tarida and Pontus Lindqvist. Let me just give you a short introduction to Robert Williams. He's standing there already waiting impatiently. Dr. Robert L. Williams Jr. is the founder and partner of WIC Research.com, with offices in Houston, Texas, and near Marrakesh, Morocco. It is a leader in the wine in a can market, being the first to conduct quantitative research and surveys on the wine in a can industry, while maintaining the most comprehensive global industry database, which includes brand, varietal, ABV, and more for nearly 800 winemakers offering 2,000 varietals. He consults for leading wineries and startups, is widely covered in the media worldwide and presented at Bulk Wine Exhibition 2021 already. Robert, last year you said within a few years till 25, 10% of the world's wine consumption will be in can. Would you still keep that bet?
Well, thank you everyone for having me back again this year, and thank you for all being here in the presentation. What I'd like to talk about is briefly the industry trends that are going on in the marketplace, the results of the first in the world blind taste test between identical wine from a bottle or a can, and then we'll have our roundtable discussion. So they wanted to change the world with their music. I think one of the things that we're seeing in the bulk wine revolution, whether it's bottles, bag-in-a-box, cans, is a revolution because the world is seeing that it's becoming very important to package at the point of consumption. Packaging at the point of production is also will also continue. But it's a mindset. The world is changing, and that's what we're here at this exhibition to find out. So let's look back for the last 5 years that we've been researching. We now have 860, in fact, it's now 900 winemakers that are canning wines. They have 2,200 different varietals, and that's based on what we track. There are a lot of winemakers and wine and can out there that we have not found yet, so this number is much higher. In the United States, 33 states have winemakers who can, and in the world, there are 34 countries. Okay, is that better? Okay. And you'll notice dramatic changes. Now, obviously, you're coming from a small number, so in an introduction of a new market in terms of innovation of growth, you will get large changes. But nonetheless, this is something now that continues to grow. So what are some of the trends out there? It's now becoming evident that the early days of being innovative and having something to talk about at a party is past. Now it's about the wine. You need to have good wine in a can. You cannot get past the novelty any longer with plunky wine. Our latest research shows that, unlike years ago, where convenience and things like that were most of the reasons why people would buy and try wine in a can, now they buy it because it tastes good and it's quality wine. And that's what your consumer is looking for. There are more single AVA wines out there and more interesting and innovative varietals. So you'll get some people that will age their wine in the traditional way and then can it, because we know wine in a can has a shorter shelf life than bottles. There's a lot of experimentation going on with different types of wines and different types of grapes, partly due because as the weather changes, different regions of the world have to adapt to their weather, so they're experimenting with different types of grapes to see what does and does not work. We notice a large growth in organic wines, which you'll hear about shortly from Archer Roos, certified wines, low intervention wines. Mark will be here talking about that. And there's one winemaker out there that's talking about climate positive, not just climate neutral, but climate positive. Canned wines wins against bottled wines in major competitions. I don't want to underestimate that point. And this is not in a blind test, but it's cans, bottles, whatever the wine is, they are winning major medals because of the wine. And as we've always said since we've been researching, good wine is good wine. It's the wine, not the package. Secondly, segmentation now. As the market has matured and it's moved into the growth stage, you now get some wineries, canned wine makers, that are going for low price, some are going for high price. So you get segmentation based on pricing. We now see the rise of low and no alcohol wine in a can, such as Hun or Uncanny. And niche marketing has begun to pick up, because if you understand marketing, as the market begins to get more competitors, those in the market have to look for different ways to differentiate themselves, and they look for new markets. For example, airlines. The major airlines are all bringing on wine in cans, JetBlue, Virgin, Delta, TAP, and so on. And again, it's very nice wine. Now, they do it in part because of the weight savings of the can versus a bottle, but there are other reasons as well. So when we talk about segmentation, we took a look at 2,166 of our wines, and I sorted them by ABV. And here you can see all the little dots are different wine in cans. There's a large number of canners that are selling premium wine. That's a group of maybe 12 to 14% ABV, maybe 11.5. Then you've got the mass market in the middle. You've got the spritzers down there, which are around 4.5, maybe 5.5%. And of course, you see the low and no market coming along. What's really becoming most important, or very important, obviously it's still the wine, but creativity, advertising, and traditional marketing. Wine and can makers and winemakers are spending more on advertising, period. Which means television ads. Kim Crawford has an ad where they show their bottles and their cans in the same commercial. The National Football League in the United States has endorsed wine and cans, and you can get it in the stadiums. Major League Baseball, many other sports as well. Celebrities, not ones for missing the limelight, if the opportunity presents itself, are linking up with wine and can producers. You have Bev, you have Halle Berry, Elizabeth Banks, Cameron Diaz, and Chris Carrabba, I believe, is a musician. But they have their own brands or associations. Domino's in the United Kingdom will deliver a pizza with the wine in the box. Now, currently, I believe it's one of those flat bottles of wine. But if you think about it, a flat bottle of wine and one pizza seems to be a little bit out of skew. So I could see much easier that you have some cans of wine along with your pizza, but nonetheless, they're being creative in the marketplace. And look at this ad for McDonald's in Argentina. Get a nice Malbec with your big, juicy Argentina. I don't know if that's a Big Mac or what that is exactly. But you get that in the store. You go right to McDonald's and you can have wine and your burgers. COVID has seen the rise of direct-to-consumer, home delivery, and takeout. And wine in can is perfect for that. If you're going to order a personal meal for yourself, you generally don't want a bottle of wine to come with it. But a takeout order with 1 can of wine is perfect for one person. And I believe Hun, I'm not sure yet if that's tongue-in-cheek or they actually do it, but they had a drive-in where you could just drive through and pick up your wine and drive out. Let's see if this will load. At Marks & Spencer.
Did you know you can now sample wine in M&S stores for free?
You can sample. Now, this is not wine in can, but the point is they are getting creative on sampling, as you'll see why this is so important later. So they have these dispensers set up, and on either side is the wine that they're selling. There you can see in the store, and they've got the screen up here, which talks about this happens to be their top picks and gives you some more detail. The point is, advertising information gets the consumer educated. They buy more wine in cans and more wine in general. As I said, we track nearly 900 winemakers, 2,200 SKUs. The major countries that you would expect, USA, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia. But notice down the bottom, there are wine and can producers from Ecuador, India, Israel, Mexico, Romania, Russia, South Africa, Thailand. And I'm here with a client from Morocco who is looking to can their wine. So that should give you some idea on how this is spreading. Now, what are some of the issues going on in the market? Well, first of all, the beer, spirits, and soda markets are losing their growth. And in any large corporation, when your growth slows down, you look for new growth somewhere else. And so they're beginning to enter the alcohol business in different ways. Coca-Cola has just come out with a Coke and Jack. That's what you could get always at your local bartender, or at your bar, but now they're putting it in a can. Topo Chico, hard seltzer. I don't understand hard seltzer. That's not my purview. But there are many hard seltzers out there. Mountain Dew has put their name of Mountain Dew soda onto a hard Mountain Dew. Truly hard seltzer, not to be outdone, has Extra, which is now 8% ABV. Your other hard seltzers are more like a 4.5 type ABV. So they, again, have to segment their market. There's hard seltzer, and then there's hard seltzer extra. And a new category came out, wine soda. This came from Woodbridge Winery, one of the major wineries in the United States, and they are trying to create a new category. And I suspect they're doing that because it's a bridge from the younger crowd that likes sweet and has Coca-Cola for breakfast instead of coffee, trying to bring them in with a low ABV, well, it's a 7%, but create a new category. So that's very interesting to watch, and most you may not remember, but back in the 80s, the Taylor Wine Company in the United States, which was one of the largest wineries in the world, actually got together because it was bought by Coca-Cola and was selling wine in a can, little stubby wines on airlines. So Coca-Cola has been there before. The expertise of the canners themselves are very important because it's a balancing you have to do between the wine and the cans. And so you have to pay attention as a canner and as a winery to that combination. Lately, there's been a problem in getting aluminum cans. Why? Because of water in cans, soda in cans, Red Bull in cans. Everybody is putting things in cans, and Ball and Arta and the large canners are still ramping up production. They're building many new plants, but it takes a while, so you have to take that into account. We're now seeing more of what I call the ground game, the rough and tumble, in the store, shelf space type of distribution. If your product is not there, the consumer may go with another product because it's on the shelf. And that's where your traditional fast-moving consumer product groups, products, companies really shine. The P&Gs and the Nestle's and those types of company that know how to get in the shelf and own that shelf space is becoming much more important. And finally, we're getting more merger and acquisition and investments starting up. There are crowdfunding to start new wineries and new wine and can companies. We see that Babe, which was a large wine and can brand in the United States, was bought by ABI, Anheuser-Busch InBev, the largest beer company in the world. And you may not realize it, but ABI has 6 wine and can brands, including Babe. Gallo, one of the largest in the United States, has the association with Bev. Constellation Brands is working with Archer Roos, and Pneumatica recently announced that they are working with an investment company called Sweater. So you can see how the market's beginning to shift now. It's not just getting the wine in a can, but now it's we need the volume, we need the distribution, and that takes money. And so you see some arrangements in that way. So you have to adjust your strategy. If you are just entering the market, you need to understand that it's much more crowded. If you're in the market, you need to understand how it's changing. And you have to figure out why and how can you differentiate your wine and can from someone else. Now, I noticed, for example, as I walk the floor, here's a company called My Crush, which now makes it 2,201 wine and cans that I have. And right on the front, on the label, they say, take care of the planet and take care of yourself. The younger generation that really walks the talk about sustainability will buy aluminum because it's infinitely recyclable. Bottles, yes, glass you can recycle, but it's much more difficult. Cans are much simpler. So they're being very out front. Take care of the planet, okay? And of course, they're saying their wine is good. So what is your point of differentiation, and how will you compete as a winemaker? So let's talk about the blind taste test. For a number of years we heard, well, I don't like wine in a can because it tastes tinny, it tastes, it's not going to do it. So we thought, okay, well, is there a difference? And so we put together the first academic study, which took the same wine from a bottle or a can, did a blind taste test, and it was very simple. We had the wine, we had A and B. You taste A, you taste B, which one do you prefer? A or B, or no difference? We did it in the United States and Europe. We did it last year at WBWE. And we had 8 different wines. Oh, we had 7 different wines because one of the company, Bridge Lane Wines from Long Island, New York, did both surveys because that way it gave us a way to look at 2 different groups, even with the same wine. So what did we find? Overall, no significant difference between a bottle or can. 40.9 versus 40.3%. And we also like to look at those that said can or no difference because we think that's important as well, and we'll work on that a little bit later. We looked at it by gender. Males, no significant difference between wine from a bottle or wine from a can. Females had a slight preference for bottles, 41.6 to 40.2. We asked the question, have you ever tried wine in a can before? So you've tried it yes or you've tried it no. If you had tried it before, no significant difference. If you had not tried wine in a can, they preferred bottle over can, and you'll see the significance of that shortly. We asked a question about subjective wine knowledge. Now, obviously that's an opinion, but we're asking them, what do you think your wine knowledge is compared to your peers? How do you think, do you have low wine knowledge or high wine knowledge? And what we found out that if you had low subjective wine knowledge, you preferred a can. And if you had high subjective wine knowledge, you preferred the bottle. And you'll see the significance of that shortly. So what did we find from the blind taste test? Overall, no significant difference. There were some differences by varietal, but that gets much more detailed than we want to talk about today. But overall, could not tell the difference. So it's the perception of what I'm drinking if I see the can or the bottle, not the taste of what I'm tasting. Which do I like? Which do I prefer? By gender, male, female, doesn't matter, no difference. If you had tried it before, there was no difference. And if you hadn't tried it before, there was a bit of a bottle preference. And if you have low subjective wine knowledge, you prefer cans, and high subjective wine knowledge, you prefer the bottle. So in closing, overall consumers could not tell the difference between the identical wine packaged in a bottle versus packaged in another format, such as cans. Now, we did it cans. Other people may want to do it with bag-in-a-box, kegs, etc. But they could tell no difference, although there were some differences by varietal. These results reveal that without the extrinsic cue, such as packaging, sight, sound, etc., and only relying on the intrinsic cue of taste, overall, the consumer cannot tell the difference. And this suggests that consumers' acceptance and preference for wine may be strongly influenced by these extrinsic cues and other forms of branding and marketing. And in agreement with prior literature, it implies that customers could be using these extrinsic cues to both assess the quality of wine and to reduce their purchase decision risk because they have some level of confidence that based on their assessed wine quality, they're buying something that's good and therefore their risk is reduced. And notice that if you're buying a 750 milliliter bottle of wine, your purchase risk is higher than a 250 can of the same wine. So the smaller cans reduces consumer risk, which increases their ability to want to try it. Again, in the real marketplace, not in an academic study, it depends on lots of other variables, not just taste. So this raises the possibility that branding and marketing activities are effective in the wine industry to help shape perception. And it could have a substantial influence on consumer preference and purchase consumption. So we're moving from the realm of novelty wine in a can to what tastes good to what you really have to do as a marketer to sell any product or service. And winemakers should take this into consideration. And an effective way to do this is more sampling. Because remember, sampling and tasting, like we saw from the video in M&S in the store, reduces your risk. You test a little sample in the store, and if you like it, you buy a whole bottle. Or you test a can, and if you like it, you buy a whole bottle or something similar to it. But sampling is very important, especially for the wine and can marketplace. And I think that's a good place to talk about the fact that we will be letting you sample some of the wine from the panel members here, because sampling is very important. If consumers try it, they will buy it. And if you're interested in working with us, please contact us at wsaresearch.com. And with that, I think we will do the roundtable. If
Thank you very much, Robert, for this impressive insight into the canned wine revolution. I think we should deepen the topic now, and I would invite the other three people, Alicia, Mark, and Pontus, to come here. I will give a short introduction to all of them. Alicia Towns-Franken, with over 25 years in the hospitality industry, is Vice President Wine Portfolio at Archer Roos, one of the leading canned wine companies in the US. She is responsible for growing the wine portfolio of Archer Roos and for creating an industry-focused program to help strengthen category awareness of alternative packaging by developing stronger ties with the winemakers, thinkers, critics, distributors, movers and shakers that are the gatekeepers in that industry. Alicia was born, as she told me yesterday, in Chicago. She lives in Boston, and I may allow myself, she's married, being German, she's married to a German guy. This explains the German name Franken. Mark Tarida. Mark Tarida is Dutch national, though born in Barcelona, Catalonia, musician and wine entrepreneur. He has always been searching for boundaries and new frontiers, for example, winemaking, investing, and helping create wine plantations in Sweden. Experimenting with the use of art in wine labeling and also experimenting with new packaging, Mark thinks that the canned wines format opens a new spectrum of opportunities in the wine industry, offering a new market for premium, organic, vegan, and even natural bulk wines in a 100% recyclable and extremely planet-friendly package with the most modern and daring designs. Next one, Pontus Lindqvist is from Sweden, the upcoming wine country, as I would say. With a degree from École Hôtelière de Lausanne, Switzerland, Pontus has worked in several five-star hotels across Europe before being bitten by the wine bug. After completing WSET3 in 2014, he founded a wine import company solely focusing on lesser-known wine regions and countries in Europe, such as Hungary, Slovakia, and Serbia. He joined JUICE as a co-founder at the end of 2021, intrigued by the challenge of convincing people that great wines can be poured out of a can. At JUICE, he holds the title Head of Product, in charge of the sourcing and canning process. Please, go ahead.
Hello? Okay. So the questions we'd like to talk about, and these are in the presentation if you have it. We will be talking about the questions, and certainly we encourage a lot of question and answers because we're all here to learn, you're all here to learn as well. So I think I'd like to start off first, since we've said it's about the wine. How does that impact your business and your decisions as you continue with your wine and can business?
What do you say?
I talked the questions about the quality of the wine. How does that influence how you run your business?
Hello. Well, it is very important. Actually, the sourcing for us is very important because we work more thinking of appellations. So we want to show more like different regions and then sourcing wines from them. And be also aware of the changes in the wine industry, in winemaking. I think that's why we also really think that natural wine and cans works really good together because of the tasting and so, and what we've tried also from other producers, it's really very interesting. And really finding quality is very important. But of course, if well, I'd say what we have like two type of wines. Ones that are more on a entry level that we can scale up and grow the business with. And then we have another set of products that are like what we have here, that we have more like limited edition, like limited quantities. And but we think it's really important for us because it shows what we think where the wine industry could go in terms of working with cans. That you can have really nice wines that you can put in the can. So it, you know, like one thing helps the other, because then for the sourcing, for the wines that we can build a more grow, then these wines help us to show the quality standards that we have.
May I add something?
Yeah.
Yes.
So quality sits at the top of the portfolio at Archer Roos. I think there's a lot of bad wine out in the world, and people unfortunately think canned wine, not great wine. We beg to differ. So it's really important for us that we partner with our winemakers, that things are being made with our specifications, and that we are true to them as they are to us, and true to the varietals. So for us, quality is absolutely the first thing we have to look for. And also, who do we want to work with? It's not just putting any wine in the can, it's putting, for us, the right wine in the can.
Now, Mark, you mentioned something that's interesting about the quality. You do your limited wines, you do your limited wines as a way to sample and test the market, not only if people like it, but if it works well in a can.
Well, we also do like them. So we have like collaborating wineries where we have a list of different wineries that we've been starting this project with, and some of them are not very large wineries, so they have limited amounts of wine that we might be able to grow with in time, but that we thought that it was quite interesting to show and to have it in a can, and then just bring it to the market to show this specific qualities, this specific also typology of wines that are related to like the Garnacha, and we have a white Garnacha orange that comes from Penedès, and it's like slate terroir and so on, that you can bring this type of wines that are meant, or they normally you can only find them in bottles, in cans. And same with the German wines, and same with other wines we're sourcing and bringing in the market from France next year. And that's and it's limited because we have limited amount of wine. I mean, that's why it's limited. It's not like the wine that you can scale in volume. It will take. It's possible, but it will take time.
Okay. Now, Pontus, with your background in the hospitality field, you must be very aware of how quality of the wine impacts the hospitality and that industry. If you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so my approach, as mentioned, I've been running a wine import business with very small boutique wineries and mainly natural wine. And when I found out about canned wines and got involved in this project, what really intrigued me is the challenge. I think, you know, to have for canned wines to really make an impact in the market long term, I think we really need to get the industry on board. And so we adopted a very top-down approach. So really starting with the high-end sommeliers and getting the validation within that industry. Because I think what's the problem for canned wine and what it's been and what it still is people don't dare to enter the market with anything of real quality. I feel that people are scared because the perception of canned is so low that everyone is very afraid to move upward and like into the premium segment with wines. So I feel to some extent we're trying to take a bullet here for the industry and trying to starting with, so you'll be drinking a white Burgundy, for example, today. And obviously we will also need to enter the market with a cheaper range of wines, but we felt that as a starting point, we need to get, you know, world-class sommeliers really excited about the wines and to show them that you can, you know, in blind tasting that there is no real difference. So that's our kind of take on quality, that we need to get the key kind of gatekeepers and decision makers in the industry to get excited about this and not just come from the bottom up kind of, yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned psalms. You may not realize, but out of the 450 master psalmies in the world,